أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه من السنة بسنة الدين أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا واجتنابه اللهم إنا نسألك خير ما سألك عبدك رسولك نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذ بك عبدك رسولك نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Marriage Life series. Today is part 4, and the topic is compatibility of spouses. The previous 3 Fridays, we have talked about part 1, 2, and 3, the various aspects of marriage, as we started with this Happy Marriage Life series. Today is a very important topic after going through the purpose of marriage and the how to choose a spouse and the purpose of spouse. Today is the topic of compatibility of spouse between two individuals that are marrying each other. Like I said many times in the previous Fridays, that marriage is by nature an intention forever. There is no time limit on the marriage. There is no stipulation that I'm marrying you for X amount of time. The intention of both parties is to live until death do us apart. And therefore, we don't know when death will come to either one of them. It could be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, could be 50 years married together. Hence, the timing has to indulge in the person the concept that longevity and sustainability of the marriage is important. Meaning you're not marrying someone temporarily for a few, because when you have the concept of temporary in mind, then there's a lot of things that you forego, that you ignore, because you know it's temporary. For example, when you travel from your home to another city, another town, and you stay in a hotel, the hotel is not your permanent abode. It's not your house, not your home. So you let go of many things. You forego many things because you know I'm only going to be here temporary, a day or 2 or 3 days a week. But when you are buying a house, when you're renting a house, and you know that this is your permanent abode and you're going to be living here for a long time, then you go to the nitty-gritty details and you watch out for things, right? Similarly, in a marriage, because marriage is not temporary, it's permanent or until death comes to us. Therefore, it's important to understand in the marriage that we are choosing someone with whom we can spend a long amount of time. We're not going to spend with them just a few weeks or months or years. We're not going to spend with them just a little bit here and there, but this is someone who I want to spend the rest of my life until I die from this earth. Therefore, compatibility is very important issue. But having said that, it is also very important to understand when we are choosing a spouse and when we're looking for compatibility, we don't have so high expectations. There is no such thing as ideal husband or ideal, wife. There's no such thing as an ideal spouse. There is no ideal in this world. This world is a world of temporary. This world is a world of perishing and vanishing and withering away. Nothing is permanent here. Therefore, you can't choose someone with an idealistic mindset in that I want to have this. Why I'm saying that? Because many of the marriages break apart because people have certain ideals in their mind. They have preconceived notion. I want a wife like this. I want a husband like this. And then when they are choosing a spouse, they have this framework, this mindset that this is what I want. And they're trying to extrapolate the candidate that they're choosing onto that. There is no perfection in this dunya. Insan by nature is flawed. Insan by nature is deficient. There is no perfection in anyone. Maybe somebody's face looks good, their body doesn't look good. Or their body is good, their face doesn't look good. Maybe somebody is this color and that color. Maybe somebody looks like that, maybe somebody looks like that. So you can't have ideals. You can't have perfection in your mind. You have to understand that there has going to be certain deficiencies, certain shortcomings. You have to be realistic. You can't be idealistic. You have to be realistic in choosing a spouse that, yes, I may get certain things in my spouse, I may not get certain things in my spouse. Because perfection is only in akhirah. in Jannah. We're not choosing a hur, all right? A hur that Allah has mentioned for us, especially for guys, for boys, I would say men who are looking for marriage. There are many times they're looking for an ideal wife or idealistic, woman or girl. There is no such thing as the ideal. We have to be realistic. Everybody will have some flaw. Everybody will have some deficiency. There is no perfection in human being. Human beings are not perfect. So when we're choosing a spouse, we have to be realistic and humble in the sense that if I'm looking for the best in my spouse, what am I? What deficiency I have? Problem is when boys and girls are choosing a spouse, they forget about their own inner deficiencies. When a woman or a girl is looking for a husband, she thinks, I want this in my husband, but forgets what she has as a shortcoming, forgets what she has as a deficiency. Likewise, when a boy or a man is looking for a wife, he wants that I want this in my future wife. I'm looking for these things in a woman. But they forget as a man, as a boy, they forget what are they lacking. And the other thing with this youngsters nowadays, with youth, shabab, because of this social media explosion, because of this exposure of so many images and movies and whatnot, people have this preconceived notion that an ideal wife or ideal husband has to have this kind of figure or this kind of body or this kind of looks or this kind of beauty. you know I've heard boys or men even giving specific details of even the measurements of the body size. Subhanallah, astaghfirullah. Some boys or some men have said, oh, I want a wife who has the measurements of like 33, 22, 37, or something like that. I mean, like, are you buying a object? Are you buying a product, an entity? Are you purchasing something as a toy? Or are you being realistic that this is a human being? Don't go on just beauty. Don't just look for beautification and handsomeness and attraction. There are so many things to look for in a spouse in terms of compatibility. And that is why, if you remember, 2 weeks ago when we were talking about marriage in this marriage series about choosing a spouse, we mentioned the hadith of Rasul Sallam, that Rasul Sallam mentioned that tunka al mara li arba, that a woman is married for four reasons, either for her beauty or for her money or for her status or for her deen. And yes, there's nothing wrong in looking for beauty. I said that before too. But when you're looking for beauty, don't think that you're gonna find a hur, a woman of Jannah. Likewise, when women are looking for a husband, for a spouse, you should not be looking for like a ghilman. Ghilman is like the beautiful young men given in Jannah, because perfection is only with Allah and perfection is only in Jannah. Here in dunya, everybody's going to have a flaw, everybody's going to have some kind of deficiency. So when it comes to compatibility, yes, it is wise, it's wisdom, it's hikmah, it's wise to look at those three things that Rasulullah mentioned in the hadith. He mentioned beauty, he mentioned money, and he mentioned status. The fourth he mentioned was deen. Of course, deen, everybody has to look for deen, because that's what he said. Fazfar bizat din tarbat yada. But let me tell young boys and girls, shabab, young boys and girls who are thinking of marriage, when you're choosing someone as your spouse, as your husband or wife, make sure that you choose someone who has also some kind of relevance in compatibility in those three stages, the beauty, the money, and the status. Why? Why I say that? Because it is being realistic. If you say that, oh, I don't care about money, I don't care about beauty, I can marry the most ugliest person on this world. Yeah, fine. That is all, emotions, hassasiyat, jazbat, that's emotionality. But we are not supposed to be emotional. We're supposed to be intellectual and realistic. You may have the most biggest iman, but if you say that I don't care about beauty, I can marry the ugliest person. But once you marry, and somewhere down the road, after a few weeks and months or few years of marriage, you start having some kind of hesitation, some kind of disgruntlement that, oh, my wife or my husband is not beautiful, and shaitan starts putting waswasa. So now that's going to break up the marriage. So why enter into a marriage when you have compatibility issue? Because let's say, for example, what I mean by compatibility, if somebody is very beautiful and they marry somebody ugly, let's say, for example, they may, from iman and deen perspective, emotionality, they become, oh, I don't care about these things, I am a muttaqi person, I only care about deen. So now they married and there's a mismatch in the beauty phase, or there's a mismatch in money. Because remember, the hadith said four things. One of that was money. So let's say somebody is poor and they marry a rich person, or vice versa. Somebody is rich and they don't care about, poverty, and they marry a poor person. But after marriage, there are now friction, there are now differences, there are now issues starting apart because of non-compatibility. See, we don't have to live in infatuation, in fantasy land. We have to live in this world, real life, realistically. Infatuation, or what you call fantasy land, is that, oh, I don't care about this. I can, survive. I can take a husband or wife who's poor. But then the way their upbringing, the way they were brought up was different because of the financial needs and financial status of their family, and you being rich or poor cannot adjust to them, or it may require a lot of adjustment. If you have the guts and the stamina to adjust to your spouse's status in terms of beauty or money, or their lineage or background, then fine, go ahead and marry them. But let's be realistic. Someone, in terms of compatibility, we mean that there should be some mode of reasonable sensuality. There must be some way or mode of compatibility or comparison. you know Comparatively, we can never say everybody's equal. No two fingers are equal, so how can two individuals be equal in beauty? How can two individuals be equal in money or status? Of course, there is no equality. But what we're saying, when you're choosing a spouse for compatibility purposes, you have to come as close as possible in those three categories that are mentioned in the hadith. And it's not haram, it's not forbidden to choose somebody who is in the same domain as you are in those three categories. Yes, the hadith says choose somebody with the deen and you'll be successful. That's right. The first priority is deen. But after choosing the deen, if we also investigate and evaluate that, is this person compatible to me in this category of beauty, in this category of money, in this category of respect and honor and dignity and status, then so be it. Why? Because otherwise there'll be a mismatch. Somebody who's very beautiful, somebody not so beautiful. So all their life, there might be some kind of disgruntlement. There might be some kind of, big gulf, big khalij, distance. But if somebody is, medium beautiful and somebody's medium beautiful and they get married, yes, life will go on. Somebody is extremely beautiful and the other is extremely beautiful, yes, it'll go on. A lot of times when you go to marriages and you see the husband and wife, or you see the bride and the groom on the stage, the first reaction you say is, wow, what a match. Usually the audience, the people attending the marriage, the first thing comes from their mouth is, wow, what a match. Subhanallah, beautiful, perfect match. Whereas other places where people go, they say, what a mismatch. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Oh, look at the wife. Look at the husband. Oh, look at this spouse. It's people, the audience observing the people, even they are, it's trickling down in their brain. Even they are absorbing or digesting or analyzing that there is a slight mismatch here. Why we want to avoid as much as possible mismatch? To have the marriage longevity, to have a long marriage. Because if there is mismatch but their emotions are high, that, oh, I don't care about mismatch, I care only of deen, fine, you'll get married today because of deen. But because of the mismatch in those three categories, somewhere down the road in the marriage, you will have problems, you will have difficulties, you will have resentment, you will have regret, you have remorse. And we have heard people saying, especially spouses saying, oh, why did I marry this person? Spouses who are on the brink of breakage of marriage, spouses who are on the brink of divorce, they're saying to each other, why did I marry you? What was my mistake that I married you? And keep in mind that when they were marrying on the day one, they said, oh, I don't care about this, I don't care about that, all I care about deen. Fine. You were highly emotional, you were not realistic, you were becoming idealistic. But now reality sinks in. Now the mismatch is there and it will come in. Likewise, in terms of financial status, wealth, either the wife or the husband is very, very coming from a very rich background, rich society, or the wife or husband is coming from a very poor and lower strata of the society. Fine, because of deen and emotionality, they could both marry and say, oh, we don't care about richness and poorness, we just marry. But after marriage, now the habits are different. Somebody who grew up in poverty, somebody who was matured in limited means of money, their habits, their lifestyle, their likes and dislikes will be different. Their priorities will be different. Their absorption rate, their patience, in stamina will be different compared to somebody who grew up in a rich household and had all the luxuries of life from a young child until the age of marriage. Their lifestyle, their habits and likes, dislikes will be different. Their patience level will be very, very different. So now there's going to be a mismatch. One is here, one is here. So how are you going to match each other? Yes, they married each other because of emotionality, but now the reality begins to sink in. They say, oh, you don't do this. No, you don't do that. Oh, why you do this? Oh, why you do that? These arguments begin to start because they did not realize that they were looking for compatibility. Vice versa, whether it's the woman that comes from a rich family, whether it's the man who comes from a rich family in a marriage, you know, there's nothing wrong of having financial, difference, but that difference will bring about friction and disorientation and misalignment in the marriage. In order to align the spouses, in order to bring the people closer to each other, you have to be as close as possible in that financial status and strata. Why? Because they have been raised like that. Their upbringing has been like that. So the mental synchronization will be there, and their habits and likes and dislikes will also be as close as possible matching. So this will reduce friction. Remember one thing, brothers and sisters, always in marriage, try as much as possible to reduce and minimize the issues that will create friction in the marriage. Try to minimize as much as possible the problems that would arise because of incompatibility in the marriage. And this is not haram. This is not against the deen. Even Rasulullah also showed this in the Quran and in the Seerah of Rasulullah. If you remember, I'll quote over here an incident from the Seerah of Rasulullah. The Rasulullah had a adopted son, Zayd, radiallahu anhu. And he married his adopted son Zayd to a woman that was from a very, very good, rich background, Zainab bint Jahsh. And and the proposal had been sent to Zainab about Zayd, but she rejected. Then Rasulullah insisted on Zainab and said, you have to marry Zayd and he's good and suitable for you. But because Zayd was from a very poor and pauper background. He was an adopted son of Rasulullah. He didn't have that much means and things. Whereas Zainab is coming from a very, rich, versatile background, diversity. So yes, they got married, but they always had issues and problems in the marriage. This is Sahaba Rasulullah that we're talking about. This is the first generation of Muslims we're talking about. Zayd and Zainab, their marriage, had turbulence. Their marriage had problems, ups and downs, until finally it came a point where they got divorced. And that is mentioned in the Quran. Allah mentions that in the Quran in Surah Nur, that Allah mentions to Rasulullah that we married you, O Muhammad sallam, to her, Zainab. When Zayd divorced Zainab bin Jash, and Zainab was now a single woman again, a divorcee. So Rasulullah was married to Zainab by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ordered Rasulullah to marry Zainab bin Jash. So the same Zainab bin Jash to whom Rasulullah insisted that you marry Zayd, he ends up marrying her, and Zainab ends up becoming the mother of the believers. Zainab ends up becoming the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu. So that tells us and that shows that yes, turbulence and mismatch can happen in terms of various issues, whether it's beauty, whether it's financial status, whether it's status and background of society. We should try our best when we're looking for somebody to marry is that we are as close as possible in the matchmaking, in the compatibility. And then second, on top of that, we have to one thing keep in our mind, no matter how much you look for compatibility, there's always going to be some loose ends. There's always going to be some mismatch in certain things, and that is where accommodation or patience of marriage comes in play. You can't have it all, you can't have everything. This is not one size fits all. It's not like a dress that, okay, let me buy small, medium, large, x large, whatever's my size, let me take that and put it on my body. No, this is a human being you're dealing with. So human beings don't come in a set framework. Human beings are flexible, adaptable. So you have to adapt yourself. You have to make yourself compatible to your spouse, even if there is little things that are incompatible with each other. You try as your best when you're looking for a spouse. You try as your best to look for all the compatibility issues. But to say that I don't need to look for compatibility, I just want deen and that's it, that is being foolish. That is being stupid in terms of being marriage, because then it will create a lot of disputes and differences and disagreements in the marriage life that will lead up to a turbulent marriage life. And we want to minimize all the chances of divorce. Divorce is not an option. Yes, divorce is halal. Yes, Allah allowed divorce, but it is the most disliked. Abghadul halal and Allah at-talaq. The most disliked halal thing with Allah is talaq. So talaq is not an option. Divorce is not an option. You're not marrying someone that, oh, if it doesn't work out, I'm just going to divorce. You're not going to buy a food from a restaurant. You're not going to buy some clothing from a store that, oh, if it doesn't work, I'll refund it. I'll send it back. You can't return a wife. You can't return a husband. There is no refund. You can't refund a husband or wife. Once you're married, you're married. That's why you have to be so careful before saying, yes, I want to marry this person. That's why you're supposed to do istikhara, asking Allah for advice. That is this person the best person for me in life, in this life and hereafter? If yes, then Allah make it easy for me to marry them. That's the purpose of istikhara in marriage, that you are consulting Allah, because we are limited. We don't know future. We don't know in hindsight what's going to happen. Allah is al-alim al-khabir. He knows everything, the past, the present, the future. And Allah knows everything about both the individuals. So Allah knows if this person is good for this or this for that. That's why we do istikhara. We ask Allah that, is this person who I intend to marry good for me? Then make it easy for me. And that is why when we do the istikhara and then go ahead and choose someone and marry, then we have to realize that, look, we tried our best to find the most compatible person, but there may still be certain elements, certain things which may be incompatible to each other. For example, I'll give you a small example, that somebody wants to sleep sideways and somebody wants to sleep on their back. Husband and wife, they got married. Now he doesn't like the way she sleeps, she doesn't like the way that person sleep. Can you ask that before marriage? How do you sleep on your bed? It's a very foolish question. Meaning, when it comes to compatibility, there are certain things that you have to just let go. You just have to try your best to accommodate. There are certain things that you can ask ahead of time to find the compatibility between the two spouses. But what I'm trying to say is, we cannot live in an ideal world, idealistic world. We have to live in a reality, realistic world. That we tried our best. I asked the most questions that I wanted to. She asked the most questions she wanted to. We both tried to evaluate each other. We feel that we are compatible, or the parents ask each other, and the parents feel that, yes, my daughter or my son is going to be compatible for this person. Yes, Bismillah, we make istikhara with Allah and we go Bismillah and we go ahead and start marriage. But after marriage, if we find certain things are a little bit up and down, a little bit here and there, that's when we have to give and take. That's when we have to compromise. That's when we have to sacrifice, because there is no refund. There is no return. You can't return a spouse. You can't just say, here, take your daughter. Here, take your son. I don't like them. I don't want them. I made a mistake. You can do that with clothes. You can do that with products. You can do with that certain things, but you can't do with a human being. You can't return a human being back to their parents saying, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I chose the wrong person for my marriage. Here it is, go take it back. You married and you're married. Yes, ultimately, if you try your best and things don't work out, then there is an outlet provided by Allah, which is known as divorce talaq. But it is the most disliked thing by Allah. It's abghadul halal and Allah. We don't want that. And the other thing question people ask is compatibility really a valid question? Do we really have to be compatible? Of course, yes. Allah mentioned this in the Quran. Because if you don't look at the compatibility of spouse issue, you're going in a blind way, in a blind corner. You're going in a dead end. You're basically you're committing kind of like, a self-destruction. Because Allah mentioned in the Quran, in Surah Nur, Surah 24, about the compatibility issue. Listen to what Allah says in chapter 24, Surah number 24, verse number 3. The third verse in the Quran, in the Surah of Surah Nur, Allah says, Nur, light. الزاني لا ينكح إلا زانية أو مشركة والزانية لا ينكحها إلا زان أو مشرك وحرم ذلك على المؤمنين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that the fornicator, the zani, the one who did fornication, zina, shall not marry anyone except the one who committed fornicatress, the woman. Zaniya. Zani is male and zaniya is female. So Allah is saying that if somebody committed fornication, somebody committed, zina before marriage, now they are not compatible for a virgin. They have to marry someone who is not a virgin, a zani or zaniya. This is Allah talking about. Allah manifesting this criteria and condition. Why? Because when you are a virgin, you are pure and pristine, and you are preserved and modest and chaste. All your life before marriage, you guarded your izzah, your maqam, your self dignity. You guarded your body from any kind of sinfulness, from zina. So how is that person equal to someone who did not guard their body and they became loose and they committed zina? So therefore, they're not equal in status. A zani is not equal to someone who's virgin, and that's why Allah is saying in Surah Nur, verse number 3, very clearly: "Az-zani la yankihuha, az-zani la yankihu illa zaniya, aw mushrika, wa-zaniyatu la yankihuha illa zani." And a woman fornicatress cannot marry except one who is done from the male zina, and likewise a male fornicator cannot marry a woman. Why is this important? Brothers and sisters, especially parents, parents, fathers and mothers, it's very important to certify and ascertain that the person you're bringing in your home, the boy or girl you're bringing in your home to marry your son and daughter, is not a zani, is not a fornicator or fornicatress. Because many marriages have broken on the first night of marriage. Yes, as an imam, I can testify to you, I've seen many marriages break on the first night of marriage. Why? Because on the first night of marriage, the husband or the wife discovered that the other person is not virgin. They have lost their virginity before marriage. How would you feel that you guarded your body all your life? You remained, modest and chaste and pure, and you are entering someone else's body that is no longer pure and protected because they let their guard down. That creates a sense of emotional disgruntlement. It creates a sense of dissatisfaction, and marriages break apart. We've seen people divorce, talaq, the next day after marriage when they discovered somebody is not a virgin. And that's exactly what Allah is saying in Surah Nur, Surah 24, verse number 3. And that, the azani la yankihu illa zaniya, wa zaniyatu la yankihuha illa zani. Why is Allah saying that? Because we've seen marriages break because of this issue, especially in today's world when our youth, our shabab is in so much profanity, vulgarity, in school, in colleges, on campuses, young boys and girls are interacting with each other, and girlfriend, boyfriend, dating, and shaitan is everywhere. Shaitan can seduce anyone anywhere, and they can have a mishap, have a mistake and a sin of zina. So if somebody has done zina before their marriage, they're no longer equal to somebody who has been virgin all their life. And that's going to hurt someone psychologically, emotionally, and physically also. Especially it happens more for men, as that is, biologically you can discover faster if a woman is virgin or not compared to men. But the issue here we're talking about, when this is discovered, now they know they're incompatible to each other. And that is why Allah mentioned here in this ayah that a zani will marry a zaniya and a zani will marry a zani, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is setting the record straight that we have to be very careful and teach our kids that, look, losing your virginity in college, in school, in high school, in middle school is not something from the sha'air of Islam. This is not from Islamic values and etiquettes. No matter what you have done, be careful and do not let your guard down. Don't let your body be used by someone else before you get married. The only halal relationship for physical interaction is nikah, is marriage. And so if somebody has done that before marriage, that is, and then they hide that, they deceive that. No father or mother is ever going to know if their daughter lost their virginity. No father or mother is ever going to know if their son lost their virginity, if they did zina somewhere. Because no son and daughter ever comes up to their dad and mom, dad, I lost my virginity. So make sure when you find a wife or a husband for me, it's someone who also lost the virginity. Anybody says that? Anybody does that? Come on, let's be realistic. Nobody does that. So the one who's done zina, they keep it hidden. They hide it as a secret, and even parents don't know. And naive are the parents. Innocent are the parents, thinking that, oh, my daughter is virgin. Yes, pure, 100%, 100 breed, homebred, 100% virgin. And then when the son-in-law comes the next day after marriage and says, your daughter is not a virgin, I discovered, and she has already confessed to me on the night of marriage. How will the parents feel? And what will happen to this marriage? You see, marriage, again and again, I say, it's not a game. It's not a toy. It's not like you can just return it. Okay, your daughter is not a virgin. Excuse me, sir. Here you go. I need a refund. I need to return this daughter back to you, or vice versa. Sorry, your son is not a virgin. I need a refund. I need to return. It can't happen. So we have to be very, very careful that when this is a very important issue, virginity, in the issue of marriage, because this has caused a lot of rift, a lot of fighting and bickering amongst spouses when this issue has not been taken care of by the elders, by the parents before marriage. And I would also accuse of guilty for the spouses who are about to marry. They should let the other person know. Alhamdulillah, in America, people are educated and people are learning. I've known many. I have had many people come up and tell me, my wife to be already mentioned to me that she had a very vulgar, promiscuous life, but she has repented and she has returned, but she did lose her virginity. So should I still marry? If somebody is very open and point blank about it, very frank about it, and you want to forgive them for that, that's your choice. You can do that. But the thing is that it should not be a secret or hidden thing that somebody discovers later on after marriage, because then there'll be a lot of problems in the marriage. The whole purpose of this series that I'm doing for the last many Fridays is to understand the modalities of marriage. What is a happy marriage like? What are the things that bring happiness in marriage? And what are the things that bring sadness and depression in marriage that we need to avoid? And that is why in the same surah, Surah Nur, in Nur, Surah 24, Surah Light, in verse number 26, again, the issue of compatibility is mentioned again when Allah mentions in the ayah very clearly to people that, where's that? Yes, verse number 26, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Al-Khabisatu lil-Khabisin, wal-Khabisun lil-Khabisat, wat-Tayyibatu lit-Tayyibin, wat-Tayyibun lit-Tayyibat. أولئك مبرون مما يقولون لهم مغفرة ورزق كريم. Allah is saying, Al-Khabisatu, the evil and sinful people are for the evil and sinful people, and the evil and sinful males are for the evil and sinful females. وَالطَّيِّبَاتُ لِلطَّيِّبِينَ, and the righteous and pious and good, virtuous males are for the virtuous females, and the virtuous females are for the virtuous male. Khabisat, Khabisun, Tayyibat, Tayyibun. This is what Allah is mentioning. Someone who is good in their nature, someone who was pure in their nature, someone who did not live a very promiscuous, vulgar, profanity, immoral, immodest life. Obviously, they are Tayyib, Tayyibun, the Tayyibat are for those who are virtuous. This is another compatibility issue. You can't have a person who was a night dancer in a bar in a club marry someone who is like a Hafiz of Quran. There's a total mismatch. There's no compatibility. Of course, exceptions allowed if the person wants to marry them and transform them into a better individual human being. That's their prerogative, their choice. But the ayah is clearly saying that it'll be a mismatch. It'll be hard for the person to adjust to that marriage lifestyle after marriage. So that's why if somebody has been, that's why when you look for a spouse, you look for compatibility in social values, in moral values, in financial values, in all many standards. You look for that, because if somebody has been very, very vulgar and profane, they might get along with somebody who has also been very vulgar and profane and immodest and immoral. Somebody who is a party animal, dancing and partying all night, they can perfectly marry another individual who is the same kind, same way. But if someone who has been a very pious and righteous person, praying 5 times a day in the masjid, guarding their chastity and modesty, and then you have them get married to somebody who's drinking alcohol, smoking weed, and partying and dancing in the clubs and bars and whatnot, that's a total mismatch. I feel sorry for those women and for those men also whose parents don't evaluate these things and go ahead and marry. I've seen many young girls suffer, literally suffer, because their parents married them off to a boy or a man who was totally promiscuous, totally vulgar, alcoholic, drug addict, party animal. And the girl, it comes from a very religious family background, muttaqi, pious, righteous, 5 times prayer, fasting, and all that. It's a mismatch. It's a disaster. And I know parents of girls are usually, especially from subcontinent, they have this big burden. Oh, we have to get our daughter married. We have to get daughter married. Whatever proposal comes, just go ahead. No, don't do disaster. Don't throw your daughter in the fire. Don't throw her under the bus. For God's sake, evaluate, find out how that boy is, and vice versa. Sometimes it's less in terms of boys, more for girls. It happens like this, but vice versa. It happens sometimes. Parents of good boys who are very pious and righteous and protective of the deen, they end up marrying a girl because the parents knew each other, and they end up marrying a girl who lived a life that was totally vulgar, profane, immoral, immodest. And the boy discovers it afterwards. On the night of the marriage, the boy discovers that his wife is not what he thought to be. But because the parents made the arrangement and compatibility, and the children, because of their respect for their parents, never said anything. So now they end up in this quagmire, in this dilemma, in this predicament. I've seen people who got divorced on the first night because the boy, when he went into the room, he found out something about his wife, which was very, very, very unacceptable for him. And he just could not, because the girl kept it hidden from her parents, never told her parents. And she told it to the husband on the night of the wedding. So now, guess what? You're going to speak the truth. You're going to face the music and the wrath. So compatibility is very important. That's why Allah is saying in this ayah number 26 in Surah Nur, Surah 24, Al-Khabisatu lil-Khabisin wal-Khabisun lil-Khabisat wat-Tayyibun lit-Tayyibat wat-Tayyibatu lit-Tayyibun. Allah is usually add the word khabis, khabs, khubs. Khabs means evil, sinful, vulgar, profane. And tayyib means something that is pure, that is pristine, that is guarded, protected. So khabis is not for tayyib, and tayyib is not for khabis. Compatibility is there. Allah is saying, be careful of that. Finally, but last but not the least, Allah mentions also in the same surah, Surah Nur, again in verse number 32, about another issue of compatibility. Allah says, addressing the issue of marriage, وَأَنكِحُوا الْأَيَامَ مِنْكُمْ وَالصَّالِحِينَ مِنْ عِبَادِكُمْ وَإِمَائِكُمْ. Allah is saying, and marry the ayama, marry the unmarried virgin. In other words, if the boy is virgin and the girl is virgin, that is a compatibility. But if the boy has been married previously, or if the girl has been previously married, meaning a divorcee is for a divorcee and a virgin is for a virgin. Al-bikru lil-bikr wal-mutalliqa lil-mutalliq, as we say in Arabic. The divorced man for the divorced woman, the unmarried man for the unmarried woman. But yes, vice versa can happen. A divorced person can marry an unmarried woman, or a divorced woman can marry an unmarried man. There's nothing wrong with that. But it may lead to complications in the marriage. That's why compatibility is there assigned in the beginning, that try, if you are unmarried, try to find somebody who's unmarried. Yeah, if you don't find somebody who's unmarried, then fine, you can also take somebody who's a widow or who's a divorcee or something like that. But that's why Allah is saying, وَأَنكِحُوا الْأَيَامَ مِنْكُمْ, and then what's salihin? Salihin, the righteous, the pious. Try to look for someone who is righteous and pious, because if the way you are is the way they should be. If you have been a party animal, a dancing and partying person, then fine, you can choose somebody who's likewise like you from the opposite gender, because there is compatibility. Because if both don't have the deen, they will have less problems or issues and differences and disputes. Yeah, they may have other kinds of disputes, fine, but it will not be on the basis of deen. So this brings us to the conclusion of today's session. These three ayats, remember, from Surah Nur, ayah number 3, ayah number 26, and ayah number 32, which give us a vision that Allah wants compatibility in the marriage as quick, as close as possible. Of course, like I said in the beginning of today's program, you can't look for perfection. You can't look for ideals. You're not marrying a hoor or a ghilman from Jannah. You're marrying a human being, an insan. And every insan has flaws. Every insan has deficiencies. Accept them with their deficiencies. But try to choose somebody who you feel has the same likes and dislikes and the things that you are, and as close to you, so that there's less mismatch. The less mismatch there is, the less friction there will be, the less dispute and disagreements will be there in the marriage. May Allah bless all of us. May Allah bless all the marriages. May Allah bless all the spouses. And may Allah give all the people looking for spouses the best matches, the best spouses that they can find. وآخر دعوانا بالعالمين والصلاة والسلام على الكريم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Please like this video and share with others who can benefit from this, and you will get the sadaqah jariyah.